Hi everyone, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface, and you're going to have to forgive me, or not, but today's video is actually going to be really self-indulgent, but I think it's an interesting point to make, and I think it's an interesting story to go through. As many of you will know, Shenmue III has finally seen the light of day. I believe it was E3 2015 that Yu Suzuki took to the Sony stage and announced that he wished to crowdfund the next installment in the Shenmue series, a game many people never thought would ever get made. It was kind of almost Half-Life 3-esque, and I know there's the Half-Life 3, well, the Half-Life VR game coming, but, you know, that's another thing altogether. So when it was announced, it was incredible. Yu Suzuki is a video game legend. There is no denying that whatsoever. And it's not a word which I use lightly. The guy is an absolute legend. He created games like Hang On, Outrun, the Virtua series, and then turned his attention and created Shenmue. Now, for those of you who don't know, the original Shenmue game was, at the time, the most expensive video game ever made. It was Sega's huge attempt to create a masterpiece of a video game. And it cost approximately $70 million to make. And that is including the marketing budget, excuse me, as well. So to put that into some sort of perspective, that's going back into the year 2000, 2001. And then you have, of course, The Witcher 3, which I herald as the greatest video game ever made. The budget of The Witcher 3 was approximately $50 million. So just imagine that all those years later versus Shenmue clocking in at 70 million at the time. Absolutely incredible. And when it came out, because it was a Dreamcast exclusive, it was well received in a lot of quarters, and in other quarters it wasn't. For people who loved the Dreamcast, and of course the Dreamcast itself was selling, particularly out of Japan. In Japan, it was actually doing very well. But out of Japan, its sales weren't great at all. And it led to a very early demise of a console who, to be perfectly honest with you, I think was way ahead of its time. You know, the ideas of the Dreamcast with its inbuilt modem, 56K, a modem, all that kind of stuff. The online functionality to try and get people online, the fact that it had a web browser as well as, you know, playing games like Phantasy Star Online. Let's just use that as an example, where you could team up with people all around the world, literally all around the world. And that game, because of that, had an inbuilt universal translator, so to speak. It wasn't. What it was you could put together set words to create sentences, and when you put them into the chat, it would translate them to the respective person's language, so they could get an idea of what you were saying. So there were very simple phrases, not complex phrases. Come, follow me over here. Hi everyone, how are you doing? Let's shoot this, you know, those kind of things. And because of the failure, really, of the Dreamcast out of Japan, it wasn't getting the sales and attention that Sega ultimately wanted. And they did still, though, push ahead with Shenmue II. Again, pretty expensive game to make. But, once more, being a Dreamcast exclusive at the time, later releasing on the Xbox, it wasn't selling in the numbers that they wanted, particularly for a game that was so expensive to make. But it didn't stop Shenmue from developing a core follower base, a core audience that just adored what Yu Suzuki had done and the vision that he had. At the time, I hadn't played anything like the Shenmue series before. It was really quite a revelation. I was, doing kind of regular stuff to start with, little bits of training in the dojo and whatnot, and you thought it was just going to be mostly a fighting game, and then you realized that you were wandering around the streets, finding a job, forklift trucking, going into cafes and arcades and playing a game in the game. Playing things like Outrun and Hang On and maybe Super Hang On in Shenmue 2, I'm not exactly sure. But you'd play these old games that Yu Suzuki had been so influential in creating. And the story went on, and you defeat the masters and learn your different abilities and move on and up and up. And at the end of Shenmue 2, it has a very sort of soft ending in terms of there's no major cliffhanger. Ryu literally just makes his way from one place to another and meets up with the ladies, and it just finishes there, and you're just like, oh. And because of the sales, and because it didn't perform how they wanted it to, and again, that was, I think, a lot down to the availability of the Dreamcast out, or I should really say that the lack of desire for people to pick up a Dreamcast. Shenmue 3 was canned. There was no Shenmue 3, and I think the vision that Yu Suzuki had was Shenmue was going to be something ridiculous like 9 parts long or 17 parts long. There's this crazy high number of what he actually had planned for the series, with Shenmue 2 actually adopting in parts 2 to something like 5 because of the fact that he knew that he wasn't going to get another Shenmue after this. Or so it was. And time went on. We're talking about the year 2002, 2003, depending on which area of the world you lived in, really. And we had to wait until 2015, I think, like I said, E3 2015, when Yu Suzuki takes to the Sony stage and announces that he wishes to crowdfund Shenmue 3. Now, this is where things change a lot. Because before, Shenmue 1, Shenmue 2 was money from Sega and other people. Shenmue 3 was going to be crowdfunded. It was money from fans. It was money from people who loved the series. It was money from people who weren't just buying a video game any longer. They were buying a piece of nostalgia. They were buying a vision of Yu Suzuki. And they were also buying a lot of faith and trust in the people who were going to make it. So instead of forking over $60 for a video game, or 50 quid for a video game, or whatever price you pay in whichever country, you were open to contribute more, a lot more, really as much as you could physically afford. Now, at the time, I wasn't particularly flush whatsoever. I had left my decently paid job, and I was embarked on a YouTube career. I was 2.5 years into my YouTube career, and when this announcement was made, it was just beyond me. I was so emotional. I think I cried. I'm not afraid to say. I think I cried at the announcement because I love the series. I love the series so much, and I thought, Yu Suzuki is an absolute legend. He is an absolute legend, and you could clearly see he has as much passion for the series as anyone, and that is so difficult to find in modern day gaming, because normally we just find the people who want to make the most money as much as possible, as opposed to a vision. So even though I was, I used to have a mantra, I don't know, which was, as long as I can pay my rent and put food on my table, I'll always do YouTube, And thankfully I'm in a position now where it's just a little bit, it's better than that. I can pay my rent, I can put food on my table, and I've got, left over for a few trinkets here and there. But at the time I didn't. But I put 300 quid, $300, actually $300, I should say. Let's get this correct. $300 into Shenmue 3 because I really wanted this to succeed. And there were people who were putting way more than I. Thousands. You could see some people dropping thousands of dollars into this project. And I think within the first 24 hours, it hit its initial goal. Its initial goal was around about the 2 million mark. And I think it sailed past there in next to no time. Next to no time. Maybe even be 2 hours or so. It smashed through the target. And at the end of the campaign, at the end of the 30 days, it was round about the $6.5 million mark, which was amazing. And I've still got it. I've got my old PC under the desk, and I've still got it on one of the hard drives, but I recorded on Twitch the final stream, the stream leading up to the closing of the crowdfunding campaign. And it was really emotional. There's a very emotional Yu Suzuki. And I think he was in tears at the end. Not bawling, but you could see tears. When it closed and he realised Shenmue 3 was going to be made. But it was also very emotional for fans like myself because we suddenly realised that Shenmue 3 was going to be made. Now, they put a time of December 2017 as the release date for the project. And I think anyone with any common sense, really, or any sort of gaming knowledge, how the gaming world operates, we kind of knew that this would most likely never be hit. This date would most likely never be hit, but it's okay. It's just a matter of when. And yes, the date came, and we're going to delay this and delay that. But this is where things started to get a little bit wibbly with the whole aspect of it. Because from what Yu Suzuki had announced, this was going to be crowdfunded through Kickstarter. And I believe we found out later there was going to be a little bit of Sony money going in there as well. Okay, that's fine, That's fine. A little bit of Sony money, Kickstarter money. All in all, let's say approximately $10 million to make Shenmue 3. In today's day and age, that's not bad. That's something. But then other campaigns for more money started to open up. You always had the late campaign to still contribute. And then we discovered that Yu Suzuki was sourcing out other partners as well, and other partners to bring money into the project. And for somebody who had funded this via Kickstarter, you started to get a little bit nervous, because obviously when it's just your funding, you let the company go, create the game, and hopefully it comes out. Although there have been some Kickstarter horror stories, I do think this was too large a project, too high a profile for this to be one of those. But when corporations start getting involved, then corporations want this done their way and that done their way, and concessions put in. We want this pushed here and this pushed there. And initially, it didn't look that way, but we soon realised that the game started to get sourced out to other people to create. And then, of course, the big one. The relationship suddenly with Deep Silver. And Deep Silver, not great fan favourites here in the gaming world, because of their connections and relationships with Epic, who aren't exactly top trumps right now. But with games like Metro Exodus, because of the relationship with Deep Silver there, they pushed it just a matter of 2 or 3 weeks before launch as to an Epic exclusive. So anyone who was expecting to purchase it on Steam suddenly could not purchase it on Steam. Angered a lot of people. Although they heralded Metro Exodus as a huge success on the Epic Store and it sold a lot, there was a lot of trust issues that were broken. And these things happened with the Shenmue project. And that was that Deep Silver got involved, and then suddenly a game which was going to come out on PlayStation 4 exclusive and Steam and potentially others, suddenly became an Epic Store exclusive for PC, which pissed a lot of people off. And then, just to compound matters, the initial reaction from Yu Suzuki and the Shenmue III crew was, you can't get a refund. If you wanted it on PC, you either have the Epic Store or you change it to the PlayStation 4, but no refunds. So this came across as very spiteful because this is not what people signed up for. And Reason, thankfully, won in the end when Epic themselves said that we will hand out refunds. Now, how the complexity of that refund works, not sure. But Epic stepped in and said, look, we'll refund people who don't want to, who don't want to come onto the Epic Store to play the Shenmues and 3s. Now, I've got my PlayStation 4 copy here. I always intended to get it on PlayStation 4. To me, it was a natural progression. It was the Sony aspect with the relationship with Sony that Shenmue has always had. So, to me, it was the evolution. I know Sega was the Dreamcast, but the way that the gaming industry had moved on and the relationship between Yu Suzuki and Sony had moved on away from Sega and away from the Dreamcast into the Microsoft-Sony war, to me, this was always the one to get. But the fact of the matter is, there was a big dint in trust between Yu Suzuki and the people who had crowdfunded the project. Suddenly, the people who crowdfunded the project were feeling as if they were very much secondary to the partners, to the other companies that were being brought on board after the fact. Companies which were never meant to, according to Yu Suzuki. This was just meant to be this crowdfunding campaign through Kickstarter. And one little thing I just want to quickly show you here is a letter that he created in-game in an effort to thank people for the realization of Shenmue 3 and the fact that he'd love to go on and do Shenmue 4. But Shenmue 4 will only be realized if the sales of Shenmue 3 are good and if he can get the correct business relationships. Now, I would imagine that if Shenmue 4 was to ever see light of day, it would not be a crowdfunded project. It would be a project that would be based off the sales of the original game, and it would be a project based off the partners which Yu Suzuki could get on board. The problem would be is whether or not Yu Suzuki has the faith of the audience anymore. Now, although I've received this, I've yet to put it in. I've yet to even play my Shenmue 3. I've just been too busy with other things. Work, Death Stranding, Jedi Fallen Order. There are just so many good things out there right now. I don't want to just throw Shenmue on and sort of play the roulette game. I want to spend some quality time on this game soon and hopefully really enjoy it. But it's just so difficult. And I do have tremendous amount of love for Yu Suzuki. I still do. I think on a personal level, because, there have been a lot of negative aspects that have surrounded this campaign in general. To me, I think Yu Suzuki's vision outshone his common sense in this instance. I think that Yu Suzuki was so keen and eager to not only get this project off the ground, but when he realized the amount of money that he was generating, he could do different things. He could expand onto the game. He could create a bit of a better vision of maybe what was initially anticipated through the crowdfunding. Bearing in mind, of course, the crowdfunding goal initially was just a meager $2 million. And then suddenly, when you say the $2 million has become $20 million, there's a significant difference between what you can create between the two. So I think really it was a mishandling of a person's love, determination, and vision for a project versus the people who had put the money into the series, who had essentially green-lit it. Because if it didn't get the money, it wouldn't have moved forward. It's as simple as that. And unfortunately, a misappreciation of those people that enabled this project to happen. Now, hopefully there's going to be a lesson learned here. And I don't want to hold any grudges in this. I've got my game. Now, hopefully my other gubbins will arrive over the course of the next few weeks. One of those is going to be something which is going to mean a lot to me, which is a hand-drawn image by Yu Suzuki that will get framed. It will be put in a position of probably somewhere around here where I can always see it and always draw inspiration from it. But I just hope this is Shenmue 3 is a lesson learned for somebody who is a legend, for somebody who was so desperate to get his vision more akin to what he wanted that kind of maybe didn't treat the audience who allowed it to truly happen with the respect that they really deserved. So again, sorry, I know this has been a bit of a story time with Az, and I know this has been a very self-indulgent video, but it's just something I wanted to share to the people who have stuck around and decided to watch. So I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do give it a thumbs up, and also subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media and Twitch for live streaming. Links are in the description box down below, and I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care. Bye for now.